Is it? Hello and welcome to Nordic Magic Link. Today I have my friend Ali Ofstedal with me, and she is a quantum healer and an astrologer, and she is also a fellow podcaster of the Aligned podcast with her friend Jess. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me. It's
My
such an
pleasure.
honor.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to have you. And I wanted to dive into all the interesting work that you do. But first, should we tell people how we know each other?
Yes, it's such a fascinating story. And I was right when we began, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having a little bit of a out of body experience because we met literally 3 years ago.
Was it?
Like, yeah, exactly 3 years ago in this almost exact place that I'm in.
Right.
So I was, is it okay if I tell the story?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay, perfect. I was, on a really long road trip through the whole Western United States, and I had gone, through a divorce and was, looking for a new home, a new place to land, and I was in a big initiation of my own and also just, exploring shamanism and, my roots, my Norse roots and trying to figure out what the heck was happening in my life. And
Yeah.
I remember I was staying in Woodland Hills and I found on Airbnb a shamanic journey experience that was being led in Topanga Canyon. And I had driven through Topanga quite a few times, just going to the beach and stuff from Woodland Hills, staying with my friends. And I booked it. And I remember driving up to your place, which is now, I mean, literally like a 2-minute walk from where I currently live, and knowing nothing about what was going on. But I remember walking up your many stairs to your beautiful home in the canyon and coming in for the incredible journey that you led. And I had no idea what what to think what we were going to do. I just felt so drawn and called to book that session with you. And going into the journey, I remember seeing the mountains outside of your window, those big, huge, beautiful windows you had, and,
Mm.
dropping into that journey, hearing your voice and the drum, I just knew it was like something clicked, and I went through the whole, going through the sacred tree down into the underworld, and some really big soul retrieval and soul integration happened in that journey. And I just remember thinking like, okay, something's clicking, something's working. And then we stay connected. And I ended up moving to Topanga a few weeks later, found an Airbnb that I was just renting temporarily, which turned into a long-term spot, which turned into another long-term spot where I live currently. And it was just insane because it ended up being 2 minutes from your home. And I had no idea that it was when I found that place. And so, yeah, our relationship flourished and we continued, went on walks on our loop in the canyon and held space for each other during COVID. We met before COVID too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Because I was getting pretty busy with what you came to experience, which is what I call Nordic music magic. And I was getting actually a lot of clients at my house before COVID. It was really growing. And then during COVID, of course, not
yeah.
nothing. But it was so interesting because I think when we then met, I think it was like a whole year later, and I was walking with my friend Julie during the loop there in the mountains, and then we met, and you were like, "Hey, aren't you Emma? I came to see you there." And I was like, "Oh my God." And then
That's right.
it was so funny, and then you actually had ended up moving right there. Yeah.
It's
And
so wild.
yeah, it was an yeah, beautiful story. And and I'm so happy that you felt called to the experience, and I'm happy that you felt it was a strong experience for you. And why were you particularly called to something that was rooted in Nordic shamanism?
Oh, I love that question. It was a really interesting time in my life. I had been studying astrology. I was doing astrology sessions. I knew that this work was where I was being called to, to deepen. Like I knew I was meant to embody this work more. And but I also knew that shamanism in particular was where I was headed, but I just I couldn't quite see that for myself because I was, we're in Southern California, and most of the shamanism practices here are rooted in indigenous American, which is
Yeah.
such a, so many beautiful practices that people work with, from those traditions, or Peruvian shamanism. But I just, shaman of the Andes, but I knew that I was feeling a really strong pull um, to study and deepen my connection with my roots. And I'm like, my dad's whole family is Norwegian. And I actually did a long time ago his 23andMe, and he's like 98% Norwegian. The other 2% is indigenous American, actually. So it's funny
Oh,
because,
wow.
yeah, my grandparents growing up were very rooted in their Norwegian ancestry and did Sons of Norway. And we had, lefse and
I
krunkaka
just
and
had
things.
lefse the other day.
You did? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It's my goal to start learning more about, or just started cooking it. I have the recipes and everything, but it's kind of a process. You need like the whole griddle and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
and just
yummy
so
though.
everyone is aware, they're potato pancakes,
Yes.
Norwegian potato pancakes.
Yeah, it's so good, and I miss all of that. And what kind of led me, I think, down this path even more so was the passing of my grandmother. And it happened kind of suddenly in the summer, actually, July of 2019. So just before I moved out here. And I felt such an activation and initiation when she passed, which, knowing now the work I do with women, so often the passing of a loved one really opens doors for us to deepen into our ancestral healing.
Mm.
Whether it's a grandparent or a mother or father, it opens up some karmic doors for us to access healing, really deep healing. And so that was that for me. And then my grandfather passed just a few months later, right, like literally right when I officially moved here. So, and then I got in a really bad car accident on my way to go see him. So I just knew I was getting like so much support from the other side, from my ancestors to study this. And you literally just popped up on my Airbnb, and I was like, yes, absolutely. I didn't know a lot about shamanism at that point, and I didn't even know what a full journey was, like through the tree down into the underworld. Um, and it just happened. It happened without me having any knowledge of what, it was just your beautiful voice and the healing and the activations, the vibrations through that led me there. So, yeah.
Mm, thank you. I'm so happy to
Yeah,
hear that.
of course.
And you were on a journey then. You had just gotten divorced. Do you want to tell a little bit more about your background? I mean, just share as much or as little as you feel called to.
Yeah. I grew up in Illinois, in Southern Illinois, and grew up in a really small town, and a really like beautiful community with lovely humans, like a very tight knit community. It was mostly German, which is interesting, and some Dutch, I think, too. But I had this weird last name. This how do you pronounce it in Norwegian officially?
I think my mom said Ofstedal.
Ofstedal, yeah, which is, yeah, pretty much how my family
Yeah.
pronounces it, but they're from the Dakotas, and Minnesota. So I just was like, God, I always felt weird, not because of my last name, but I just felt out of the box. I never felt like I quite belonged anywhere, and just kind of struggled with that. I think most of my upbringing, and couldn't quite figure out why I was felt different. And it wasn't until my mid 20s that I started studying some of these practices and really started meditating and doing a lot of inner work, that I came back to myself in ways, or started that journey back at least. And it's taken me a while, and it's been a long journey, and I think it's a lifelong journey, but that was kind of the initiation of it. And I realized, I always say that we have certain things that catalyze us into um, coming back to ourselves. Like we can do that journey, that spiral of coming back to ourselves over and over and over again. But oftentimes there's like an event, a cataclysm in our life that creates the opening to really return. And for me, that was my nephew was navigating a lot, and he was 10 at the time, and it was just really heartbreaking for our family. My dog was sick. And then I decided to go through a divorce. So it was just, it was kind of this whole um, process of dismantling the structures that I had built in order to find some sort of stability or anchoring in my life, but they were artificial for me. Like they weren't really ones that were in true alignment. And so I had to dismantle all of those, which I know is a process you understand, and rebuild them in a way that felt authentic to me. And that's yeah, that's been the journey thus far. That was, I guess, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. My real, like, the cataclysm really happened, I would say, like 2016 was the big year for me.
Mm.
My ex-husband at the time was like, "You're having a nervous breakdown." And it was like, "Oh, yeah." And really, I think that's what an awakening can feel like sometimes.
Mm.
So, yeah.
How did you have the resources to deal with, like, were you able to see that you are not living an authentic life? Because a lot of people are not living an authentic life, and often they don't even realize it. So I'm kind of curious to like, how is it that some people have the resources or the mindset to see it and to feel it, and others don't?
Yeah, I love that question. I think that we all have a soul blueprint that we come to this life with, and that's kind of something we'll talk about when we start talking about astrology too. But I can usually see in their chart when their awakenings are happening and why. Um, and I call them awakenings. I think a lot of people use that term, but I just think it's like if you've ever experienced this, if you're listening to this and you've experienced it, it can feel like you're all of a sudden woken up to your reality. And it can be terrifying because it's things that you thought to be true maybe aren't feeling true any longer. It's an ego death. There's things you have to sort of accept and integrate that were strongly held as truth for a long time. And um for me, my resources were I just things that I like that. Honestly, it was like things that I held to be true that I was just going along with because I was a people pleaser and I was kind of like a parentified child. I didn't really ever develop agency or belief or confidence in my own abilities to do hard things or to navigate you know, challenge in the way that I really needed. And when that had led me down a path of just falling into line and sort of like going down this trajectory that was easy and safe. And when I when it was really like my nephew had been going through a really challenging time, and um it woke me up to our family patterns. It woke me up to trauma and what trauma can do to the body, to the mind, to our nervous system. And it woke me up to like focusing just on him to like, oh wow, what is my part in this? And how has my trauma and my lived experiences, how have they shaped me, into who I am now? And then when I opened that door, it just came flooding out and there was no stopping it at that point. You can't, I think that, there's a subconscious contract, or there's a subconscious agreement that we make to open these doors, and not everyone's really there or makes that contract in that life to open doors of awakening because they're terrifying, and they are like they require the death of the ego, which feels like death. And I think that there are parts of us that would rather not open some of those doors, so we can just live more disconnected from self and more in, you know, using coping mechanisms and numbing and escaping reality by, getting home from work and just drinking, the rest of the night, or living in, um, just living out of alignment, which is, it's okay if that's their path and that's what they choose to do in this life. There's no judgment, but I just knew I couldn't anymore. I had an obligation to my soul to choose something different. And it's not an easy path to go this way, because especially, like, when you're in this work too and you hold space, it's like you're constantly asked to deepen and to meet yourself deeper and deeper and to go through initiations in order to be that person that you are meant to be, to hold space as well. So it's been really challenging and really hard, but also extremely beautiful in all the ways too. So I wouldn't change it, but
Wonderful. So you opened the door. So meaning you looked at what was going on and you decided to change the things that did not work for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Were you already doing astrology work at this time?
Yeah, I had just been always interested in astrology, and I kind of chose to study myself first. Like, that was the real, like, it turned into an obsession, honestly. And I remember I had an astrology reading in 2016 or 17. I can't remember the year, but he basically told me, like, this is your path. You need to start doing this work. I had a Pluto transit and a Uranus transit, or an aspect that was really strong. And he told me, he's like, if you don't embody this work, if you don't start really taking yourself serious in this realm, then you're going to get destroyed. you know that was like, that was
Wow.
enough for me to say, okay, well, there we go. If I needed a sign, there it is. So I started just doing readings for family and friends in the beginning, and then that led to a very quick, forming of an official, work, like my official business that was required in order to up level and take myself more serious, and, you know, send the universe a signal that I'm here, I'm on board.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. I love astrology. We're gonna
Well,
have you
it
do
is.
a little analysis of my chart later.
Yeah.
But how did you then come into the healing work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I had been working on myself, my own healing for a while, and each healer I met with, whether it was a psychic or a channeler or an intuitive healer, whatever it was, they were like, "Oh, you're meant to be doing this work." And I was like, "I know, I keep getting that message, but it's daunting, to think about what's the entry into that. And I ended up studying intuitive healing with my friend Jess. It was just like, I was just like, okay, this is my entry point. This is a way for me to actually create some, because I had these abilities, like I had channeling abilities, and I could see energy and I could see how it moved in the body. I'm a Scorpio rising. I don't know if anyone else that's listening has Scorpio placements, but if you do, you get it, because, and I get, you do. I think you have Scorpio.
I
I
have a
need to look
lot
at your
of
chart.
Scorpio, not
Yeah.
rising though.
Yeah. It's Scorpios are, they have a natural X-ray vision, I always say, and especially Scorpio rising, we just, we're reading energy all the time. And so I didn't realize that's what I was doing until I started doing this work officially, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I've been doing this my whole life. I just had no clue." And actually was like moving energy in people's bodies while I was talking to them without even knowing. And so it was good to like create some framework around that and actually understand what the hell I was doing. And oops, sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on this, but
You can.
okay, what the hell I was doing, and how I could actually create some boundaries and some structure so that it would not just drain me. I was also navigating some health issues like Lyme disease and adrenal fatigue, and I was kind of like falling apart a little bit. So it was good to learn about body healing, intuitive healing. And from there, I had been exchanging with a practitioner who is a well-known medical medium and quantum healer. And we were exchanging just because she was navigating things, and she's like, no one else can do what you do. I don't know if you realize how gifted you are. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just doing it. I'm just like kind of I'm forging my own path with it. It wasn't things I'd learned. It's just things I was channeling. And she's like, you need to really start applying these skills. So anyway, here we are now, and we're just, yeah, it's always evolving and shifting, but it's so fun. I mean, I'm so grateful to get to work with the people I work with. So
What is quantum healing?
yeah, so it's working in the quantum realms to bring healing to our different bodies. And I do sort of a merging of shamanic, quantum, and intuitive healing, and whatever is really needed in that time and space for whoever I'm working with. But I do a lot of soul retrieval, a lot of quantum integration, inner child integration too. So healing trauma from childhood, from past lives, ancestral imprints, whatever's there. I can see beneath the pattern, whatever it is that we're working through, whether it's a pattern of abandoning self, then we'll get beneath that pattern where the root is in the body, and then we can work with it from there. So it would be applying different healing techniques, whatever is needed. And, working with spirit, honestly, that's the sources is really where I gain all of the information in my sessions, is just directly from source. So that's, yeah, that's kind of how I apply it.
Oh, wonderful. What does a session look like?
It's a great question. So I spend the first like 15 to 20 minutes just talking with them and seeing, if they have anything they'd like to share. The session really just goes wherever it's meant to go, regardless of if we speak it or not.
Mm.
But I like just sometimes just allowing people the space to be witnessed and seen, and what they're experiencing, what their traumas are, can be so healing just in and of itself. But yeah, typically we spend 20 minutes talking, and then I bring them through a meditation to anchor and ground and run their energy, because
Mm.
sometimes people come to me and they haven't grounded in a long time, and you can feel that. And so allowing them to deepen almost into a theta state, where we can, where there's more openings and more not capacity, but more space to go where we need to go.
Mhm.
And then from there, I'm just channeling whatever I'm seeing, for that person in particular. And oftentimes we're going into past lives, or we're going to childhood, or going into the ancestral imprint. Sometimes, um, you know, um, their loved ones in spirit come through. I'm not a medium, or I shouldn't say that, but I don't practice mediumship traditionally,
Mm.
or in a way where I don't offer specific mediumship sessions, but I do get messages from loved ones in spirit in these sessions too at times. And it's just kind of like a whatever wants to be pulled through, wants to come through, comes through. And so each one is very different, honestly. But um in the womb healing sessions in particular, I don't do those just in one-off sessions, for example. Like, I only do them in sessions of 3 at least, because there's so much deep healing that happens. They can really crack you open and bring forth a lot of trauma. So I like to create at least some sort of container for people to integrate that following the initial session. So
Mm. And does that take
yeah.
place? Are you together physically, or could it be also over the phone? Or
Yeah, it's virtual too. Yeah, I offer
okay.
virtual. I love doing in-person sessions, but we don't, um, I live in the mountains in Topanga, and it's not always accessible for everyone to come there. And I don't have a space that I feel great about holding quite yet. So I've done them
Okay.
in my backyard, which is lovely, but my partner's here too. So I always have to kick him out and before sessions. And
Yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
remember that from when I
Yeah.
was doing
Right?
music magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you so it's the quantum healing is like a you're just kind of tuning in and you're listening to also what they're telling you and sensing what wants to be healed. And then is it actually like you sending energy, or is it just the putting focus on it that is the healing part?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I am certified in Reiki.
Yeah.
And it is like Holy Fire Reiki. It is a part of the sessions. It comes in when it wants to and
Yeah.
when it's needed. And Holy Fire being, connected to Christ consciousness, which is I work a lot with Jesus and the
Mm.
Christ consciousness grid, and I just feel so connected to that energy. And um so basically what happens is I can when we're ready to drop in to the actual session, the beginning is like just conversation mostly, and I'm getting messages, they're just coming through, but um it's more so allowing them space to be heard for whatever they want to share.
Mm.
But I like to create more space for the actual session, for the channeling part. So yeah, we're usually when I drop fully in, then I can see picture of their body basically in my third eye, in my
Mm.
mind's eye,
Okay.
and it's showing me where the root of the pattern that spirit at source would like to bring forward first. So, sometimes it's in like an ovary or the womb space, or it can be in their digestive tract, and that root that root holds information. And I can zoom into that root and I can see where is the root of this pattern. There's always like almost always a childhood connection because our subconscious is formed, you know, until we're 14. And I think studies are showing even maybe later as well. But uh, our patterns are are shaped in our earliest years. Our attachment systems are shaped in our earliest years. So
Mm.
they always bring me to a childhood, but they also bring me to past lives experiences. So when we zoom into that root, I can see the timeline of where it's originated. And there's usually an ancestral component, past life in there, and then childhood. And from there, we can move the energy. Then we can bring healing to it. It usually takes like a little while to integrate. Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 2 months. It just depends on the depth of it. And sometimes it takes more than one session. Actually, it almost always takes more than one session to really, you know, depending on the pace of the person, that's really what matters, because not everyone moves as quickly as others. Some people move a little bit slower, and some people move really quickly. It just
Mm.
depends, so yeah.
That's why it's so good you offer mentorships.
Yeah, I love, love, love having that container because I know immediately when I enter into that with someone that it's a 3-month mentorship that we do, what we're going to be working on. And within that space, we can like really get into those deep layers in a way that isn't available, in just 1 or 2 sessions, but weekly sessions for 3 months. And that's really my goal, is to, in that mentorship, is to provide a space for people to like really heal and to have like a timeline around it, a container, because what I've learned in soul work is that and Francis Weller is someone who talks about this, who I love a lot. He's an incredible speaker and author and depth psychologist. But he talks, or I think depth psychotherapist. I don't know specifically what his title is. I should look that up. But he talks about the subconscious, and that it needs to have a signal that it's through a specific descent or an initiation, um, a threshold crossing, in order to move forward. Otherwise, it gets stuck in that liminal space of it. So that's why I like
Mm.
this container, because it provides a beginning and an end for people to say, we've completed this, within this space. And also when you're in that descent and you're really in those deep layers and some of your traumas, then having a safe container is almost essential, in some way, whether it's a therapist or, like this type of work. It's really helpful to have,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're mostly working with women?
Yeah, yeah. In my mentorship in particular, I work with all
Yeah.
women, although I'm open to working with a man.
Yeah.
It's just that it hasn't come through, and I also don't really, gear my messaging towards men either, but I've worked with men in my just alchemized sessions, my quantum healing sessions, and I love it. It's so fun, and it's different,
Yeah.
um
But no, I
so
can see your like your website and your Instagram. It is very beautiful and feminine,
yeah,
and
thank you.
something probably, yeah, women. I mean, I'm sure men also feel called to it, but maybe in a different way.
Yeah, it's this realm that we're in, like you and I, and just this world, this, like, I don't even know if we want to call it the spiritual realm or self-development or whatever it is. It's interesting, being a woman in this realm, and there's a lot of predator energy here too, with men as well, which I've experienced. But maybe that's my wounding, is that I prefer to work with women because it feels more safe, too. So I'll have to think about that. But yeah, it's certainly it's kind of a wild space to be in, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You I mean, you're welcome to share more, but I don't know if you want
That's
to.
okay. That would take a whole, like, a whole podcast in and of itself. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
We leave the drama for another day.
Totally. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
You have a podcast with your best friend. Excuse
I
me.
do.
Jess.
Yes.
And that podcast is the Aligned podcast, and it's a wonderful podcast. I listen to it often.
Thank you.
And you're always touching in on something that I'm also going through, and it's just wonderful to see.
Oh,
How
thank
did
you.
the Yeah, of course. How did you and Jess meet? And was it just like an instant soul connection thing that happened there?
Yeah, it was. It was shortly before I met you, actually, just like a
Oh.
month, a little over a month probably, and it was November 2019, right before the world went into a whole ego death, and and right before I'd moved out here, and I was on that trip, that road trip still, and I was
Yeah,
with Arlo, and it was like a 3-month road trip, and I
your
just had
dog.
been my dog, yeah, sorry, Arlo, very important. VIP of my life.
Yes. He's
And,
very cute.
yes, he's such an angel. But, yeah, he and I were just traveling all throughout the Southwest. I was with my sister-in-law, Emily, too, who's scorpionic and powerful and incredible too, and she and I were in Santa Fe and met my friend Jess and Trish and Corey. They weren't my friends at the time. We met them at, a little hotel. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a really cute place. El Rey Court, actually, if anyone
Hmm.
knows it. It's such a cool spot. But Arlo was our connector there because they were like, "Oh my god, he's so cute." And then it just was such a sweet, like, serendipitous meeting, and we got connected when I was out in LA. We had dinner, I guess, and Jess and I started just we just I don't know, we just immediately started talking every day. It was just like instantaneous connection, and we had obviously our connection on healing and our abilities and astrology and all the stuff that we just couldn't stop sharing. She was like in the beginning of her path too, and it was just like I think we both felt seen for the first time in a long time,
Mhm.
and it flourished from there. And then we got, it was like May of 2020, and just got a big message about starting a podcast, and I'd kind of felt that too, but it was terrified. We both had a lot of healing of our throat chakras to do and did it through the beginning stages of our podcast. And now it's like it's kind of going through its own rebirth at this point, which is so incredible. And Jess is starting her own podcast too, and we'll keep the Align podcast as well. But I just think we've both, gosh, healed so much through this journey, and yeah, it's just such a gift. So,
And
yeah.
Jess is a clairvoyant, right?
Yeah, she's a psychic medium and
Psychic
intuitive
medium.
healer as well. Yeah. So, yeah, she's a powerhouse too, and it's just fun to see both of us like kind of grow and shift and evolve the work we do,
Yeah.
and it's so wild.
Do you have a sense that you've known her in a past life as well?
Totally. Yeah. Many. It feels there's like a really deep sister connection there, and it's funny, we haven't really talked about it a lot what specific lives and like our karmic connection, but we just both know it's there, and we yeah, it's just it's a very like it's a wonderful friendship, because it's just very pure,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that comes through in the podcast.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everyone should check out the Align podcast. And I don't know if Jess has a name for her podcast yet, but we'll see.
Yeah.
She
Yeah,
does?
that'll be coming out next year. I don't know specifically if she has a name. I don't know if she's
No.
announced it yet. So
No.
I'll just let her announce that, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah. And you two have also done some retreats together with people, haven't you?
No, we actually haven't done any official retreats. We've thought about it, and but it's a lot of work to host an in-person retreat, and
Mhm.
especially during COVID times, it was just like it just didn't quite feel in alignment at certain points, and we both go through these initiations and descents, and we kind of like take turns doing it feels like, and so we haven't had a lot of space to feel like energized enough, or like fully ready to kind of hold space in that way, but I have held retreats with other people as too. My friend
Mhm.
Dorothea Barth, who is Swedish actually, and she's a um I don't know what she calls herself specifically, but she does beautiful sound healings, and um channeled channeled healing, through her voice, which is
Mhm.
lovely. And we held a retreat last December, and I've held one just like day retreats with my beautiful friend Eve Gaines here in the canyon, who has Ritual Life. And she's such an incredible human. She has studied for decades rites of passage work from different cultures, indigenous cultures, and holds rites of passage for women and through different stages in their lives, and which is like work that I'm so passionate about and find incredibly fascinating, and she has so much knowledge on. So yeah, it's been fun to collaborate with her as well, and I think she's hosting a retreat in Mexico next year that I'm going to be a part of, which is super rad, but I don't have all the details on that, and you know so we'll see. But
Fun.
April, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Rites of passage. That's something you see in all shamanic cultures. We also have that in the Nordic traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
important and something we've forgotten, you know, in
So
modern culture
yes.
to
Yeah, and friend
celebrate those changes.
yeah. It completely is. I think it orients us, and
Mm.
that disconnection and that lack of belonging is so much of our suffering on this planet, is our loss of our tribe and our loss of our roots. And the man I mentioned before, right, Francis Weller, he talks a lot about that, the missing rites of passage in our
Mm.
culture, our Western culture. And so many of us are in America in particular is what I'm speaking to. We have so many different roots in different cultures, and we've gotten so separated from those. Like all cultures have a shaman, all cultures have
Yeah.
shamanic roots, and we're missing that in this modern world. It's like a longing for belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And I love your podcast and everything you're doing, because it's been so hard to find resources on Nordic shamanism and my roots, being my great grandparents came here from Norway, and I remember hearing a lot about like on my grandma's side in particular, her mother who struggled so much with depression coming from Norway to the plains of the Dakotas, and it's just, you know, I think, most of our ancestors here in America at least were encouraged to strip their traditions because it was like a melting pot, right? And it was like the American dream, and you had to fit in and sort of belong. And in that stripping, we lost our roots, we lost our traditions, and we lost that richness that comes from understanding oneself through our ancestry. And I feel so drawn to that work more and more in my evolution as a space holder and as a human. So I feel like 2023 is the year of like deepening into my roots more and more. So I'm excited for that.
I was just thinking you should come to Scandinavia next year.
I feel like I'm coming to Scandinavia next year. I really do.
I
It's
think you are.
time. It feels like a pilgrimage,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm ready for it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think the last episode I put up of Nordic Magic Link, I was also in Scandinavia. But for people who have not heard that one, I am in Scandinavia. My voice is a little off these days. I don't know why. Probably the winter.
Mm.
No, but I've been here now 6 months, and I'm actually going to stay longer. So after 15 years in the U.S., I am trying out living in my old neck of the woods again.
I'm so
So
excited for you.
yeah, so next up will be Sweden, and I will be there for the next few months and out in nature, checking that out, see if that's where I feel called to be. I definitely need to get out of the city. I've been with my family, and they're in the city, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
been challenging for me.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
It's so like loving and nourishing to be with family, but it also brings forward so much, of our old stuff too. It's like it's kind of part of the integration work.
true. I mean, my mother being a family therapist, and we're very, very, um, very tight. I don't know what the right
I
word I'm
didn't
looking
realize
for.
that. Yeah.
But so we don't really have much stuff happening, any conflicts, not much. For me, it's more just being in the city with so many people and all the emotions around,
Yeah.
and probably also the EMF in the environment.
Totally.
But I've been feeling like I need to get out and be by water every day. Otherwise, I don't really feel. Um, I just get almost like depressed. It's like I'm taking on like other people's emotions that I'm not used to when I'm out in nature. But then when I
Yeah.
go to the water and I meditate, then I feel fine. Yeah.
I'm yawning as you say that. It's funny because when I'm in sessions, if when I start yawning, it's like we're acknowledging something, we're moving energy. So it's yeah, I
Oh,
feel like that's a confirmation for you. I love that, and I'm excited for you to be in nature. I see, like, I picture the most idyllic little spot in the woods, and I'm just like so happy for you. It sounds perfect.
yeah. It's right on a lake, so that'll be
Wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's going on astrologically these days?
Oh my gosh. Everything. I feel like it's so funny because there's so much happening right now
Yeah.
astrologically all the time. Um, one of the big things is we have Mars retrograding through Gemini, and that's really messing with everyone a little bit currently because it's like Mars is the planet of action and assertion, and it likes to move, and it likes to take action. But with it retrograding, it means it's moving backwards. So we're really having to come to terms with and reckon with and understand intimately our relationship with our deep emotions, our anger, our resentment, our frustration when things don't go quite right, or when we have an interaction with someone. It can be the planet of war and aggression too. So it's like it's having all, us study our words, our reactions. And I mean, the biggest thing is, well, not the biggest thing, but the second biggest thing has been the transits of, for me at least, and the way I read astrology, because everyone's different, but the things I've been really watching are the nodal transits through Scorpio and Taurus, which have, created the evolutionary up levels that we've all had this year. Intense initiations in those ways, and it's just, man, it's been extreme, and it's all about trauma and embodiment and the nervous system and our attachment systems, what we anchor into, our unhealthy habits, our manipulation, like all of these. It's been big, giant ego deaths, for us,
Yeah.
and our power. What we spoke about even before we got on this call was like these tests around, where do we give away our power? What is our relationship to our power? Do we use it in manipulative ways? Because that's not really empowering, that's not really empowered action. Or is it, are we anchored into our power and from a pure place? So, and then next year we have the nodes shifting into Aries and Libra, which will be a deepening into our relational study, that we've kind of been in for a few years, and understanding our relational framework, where we operate from, you know, uh, ways in which we abandon self, and codependent connections, things like that. And then next March, we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is huge, huge, huge. It's a huge collective shift, and it's a generational shift, and it's a long, long transit that it has through Aquarius, and it's going to really, in many ways, like kind of define our incarnation. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more come forward around the collective technological shifts, and you know our discernment that will be needed as far as science and technology, and the truths that will be uncovered and unveiled over the next 20 years. So it's kind of like pushing the fast forward button on everything, as if that hasn't already happened.
Okay, so in March, big changes.
Yeah, huge.
Okay.
So big. Yeah, March is a big month, honestly, next year. I feel like it's things get electric and fast because it's air and fire, Aries and Libra, air and fire. We've been in water and earth, which was deep and kind of like slow, and you couldn't get away with anything. You're kind of just like having to trudge through those descents, and then we're moving into this like electric air and fire energy again, which we were in previously. We were in Sag and Gemini with the nodes, and we're going to be moving into Aries and Libra now. So it's going to be interesting for sure.
And that'll be like personal changes, like people just their lives uprooting and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, for everyone, when you're hearing this, like taking note of where Gemini, um, Taurus, Scorpio, Aries, Libra land in your chart, and looking at that's where the change will take place. Now, you know, the other aspects of like your natal planets aspecting those transits to affect everything. So really, it'll affect everyone differently, but it will certainly force us to start taking action on what we've been working towards, what we've been saying over the last few years, especially. And so, yeah, kind of pushing us into the next chapter in a big way.
That's exciting. I love change.
Yeah. I love that you love change. Especially with all your Scorpio. I mean, I love that you love change, because I find that Scorpio placements, they like change, but they're also terrified of it, So maybe you're just evolved
That's
enough in
me.
your Scorpio that you're like, yeah, because Scorpio's evolutionary purpose is to create change, really. It's like the alchemist.
Yeah. Well, I also have Sagittarius rising, so That's probably why I love change.
Yeah, I love Sag too. I have a Sag
Yeah.
moon, so
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I remember
Yeah.
we have a lot of alignments in the astrology.
Yeah, that's right.
So is this the time to, you want to look
Yeah,
at my chart to see if
let's
you
do
can
it.
give an
Let's pull it
example
up. Yeah, I love
of your
that.
wonderful work?
Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna pull it up. That's right. Yeah, you have like all of your planets at the top. So, the first things I notice when I look at a chart are the just like the visual patterns, of where the planets land, and almost all of your planets are at the top of your chart. You have some like celestial bodies like Chiron at the bottom of your chart and the south node, but everything else, all of your actual planets are at the top of your chart, which means you came here to be seen and to live in, to really study how you show up in this world. It's not as much as like an introspective life, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
as it is like a life of learning how to integrate in the world, relational study, work study, presenting yourself. I mean, being using your voice, it makes sense that you're in a life where you're actually meant to do that now, not just explore your voice, but like share it, you know?
Mm.
Um, Having your Mercury and your moon conjunct in Scorpio at your midheaven, which you have Venus up there too. So you have Uranus, Venus, the moon, and Mercury all in Scorpio at the top of your chart. And your midheaven is Scorpio, and the midheaven is career. So I mean, exactly what you do, using your voice as medicine,
Ah.
using, yeah, it's incredible. Scorpio is it's into like the occult and the studies that for centuries have been kind of like blacklisted or persecuted, and so healing that within you so that you can bring it forward to the world and teach people and show people that living in that realm and having those beliefs is not wrong, and that it's safe to use that in a way and being empowered in that space, so I love
Mm.
seeing that Scorpio, in its shadow can sometimes hide, you
Mm.
know,
Okay.
and um, especially when it's something isn't feeling quite safe, and I mean like safe as far as like nervous system safety. It's not. Maybe you're worried of how it will be received, or you're feeling like the people you're around maybe aren't the people that can receive it,
Mhm.
and sometimes, especially having your sun or your Mercury and your moon conjunct in Scorpio in the ninth house, right at your midheaven, it's like wanting to sort of like go into the Scorpio hole a little bit, so just
Mm.
watching when that happens, or if you have a tendency to do that and knowing that that can be the shadow of that, that expression. So, but it's a clear sign that you really came here to alchemize your own healing and sharing your voice, and your medicine through that's more of a scorpionic lens though. It's like the underworld, you know?
Mm.
So your Nordic, is it music magic? Is that what it's called?
Nordic music magic. That's
Yeah.
what I called
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Like that's so spot on with your chart, and sharing that journeying, with
Mm.
people. I mean, what I did with you, for example, is a perfect example of using your Scorpio for your medicine and your purpose,
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's so cool. And then you have Venus opposite your Chiron and Taurus at the bottom of your chart, which is uh interesting, and can represent when two signs are opposing, or two planets are opposing, or celestial bodies are opposing. It means that they're kind of illuminating each other and kind of putting pressure on each other to alchemize and to learn whatever karmic lesson is attached to that planet within that sign. And so having a Scorpio and Venus, obviously it's an interesting placement for Venus, because Venus likes, it likes femininity and beauty and ease and sort of like it likes a little bit more of the lighter. It's Libra and Taurus, but it's in Scorpio, so it's in the opposite of Taurus, which is, its home place. And so having it there means that there can be some push and pull in relationship and in attachment, and learning how to stay anchored in your power um, from a pure place in relationship is a huge karmic lesson for you. Opposite Chiron and Taurus, which is all around safety and security on the physical plane in the material realm, which can mean money or connection, with it being in your fourth house. It doesn't surprise me your mom is a family therapist too, because it's like, living in that space of like understanding trauma and understanding family dynamics is really important for you in this life. And having those two opposing each other it's like the big lessons. And that's something you've been really navigating this past year. I know it has. You went through a divorce last year, right? So those eclipses, which would have been April, May, and then again in October, November, we had eclipses, and those deliver heavy lessons around attachment, safety, our power within connection and relationship, romantic and plutonic, and platonic. Sometimes I'm in my astrology brain too much. Also plutonic. But you have this beautiful balance of Libra as well. So I remember when I looked at your chart the first time a few years ago, I was like, oh, we have the same sort of themes, like Libra, Sag, Scorpio, and with your Libra sun at 7 degrees, with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto there, it's like it lightens up your chart a little bit too. And it's that sort of like, it's the appreciation of beauty and the arts and justice, fairness, and it really balances some of that Scorpio, which can just be an underworld journey all the time. We can get lost in our Scorpio sometimes if we're not like, if the Libra isn't like, yeah, come up for air. Let's enjoy nature. Let's enjoy, the lighter sides of some of these things too.
Be a little silly now and then.
Yeah. Libra is charming and so it's fun to see that balance and having your Sag rising too. It's like that's the part of you that gets to use your voice and to speak your truth, and channeling truth is so important because that's Sag. It's like it's the scholar, it's the traveler, the gypsy that travels the world and brings back the knowledge it's gathered through experience and shares from a place of truth. It's truth, its own truth. And so knowing that that's been your journey so much in this life, to find your truth, to go in the depths to access that, and then to share it, and to do it from a space of, your Libra of like seeking justice and fairness and purity, So yeah, that's just like a little short,
cool.
blip, but yeah.
Thank you. What am I going to look out for in March?
Oh, good question. Let's pull your transiting chart. I'm actually gonna do, let's see here. I'm gonna pull it for March. That's fun. Oops.
Because that's when I'll actually be volunteering at the permaculture and shamanic retreat center.
Oh, wow. How cool. Let me get the exact the date of Pluto moving into Aquarius. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, that's right. It's dipping into Pluto. Pluto's dipping into Aquarius for just a period of time from March until June. And then we have a retrograde because each planet retrogrades. And so it's going to peel back and move into Capricorn a little bit for the summer and through the fall. And then back officially in January for a whole 20-year transit in 2024, January 2024.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, but on March 23rd is the official shift into Aquarius for this first little round. So I'm going to pull that date because that will be fun to see exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Bear with me for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. Next year feels a lot less sort of like deep and dark and a little bit which is fine too, but like yeah, it's going to be a little bit more electric and like sort of like, okay, this is what we've been preparing for so long. You know, this is what we came here for, you know. So you have a lot of action in your chart. You have all of the planets will be like the transiting planets. So where the planets currently are in the sky. When I pull a transiting chart, it means that we're pulling your chart, your natal chart, which is where the planets were when you were born, and layering it with where the planets currently are. And so where they land in your own natal chart is all at the bottom. So if you think about your natal chart, is that all the planets are at the top of your chart. So all the planets next year will be at that time will be opposing your other planets. Like you have a lot of like tons of oppositions, and everything's going through your second and third house for the most part. So, which is
what does that mean?
And let me see here, Pluto though. Where's Pluto? Yeah, Pluto enters Aquarius in your first house because you have your Sag rising, but most of your it's 29 degrees. So it was just getting ready to move into Capricorn, you know, when you were born. Capricorn was getting ready to cross your ascendant is how I would say it. So at 0 degrees, Pluto will be right on top of your honestly, it'll be like at that point in time, it's not on any of your planets, but it's going to be crossing your south node in Capricorn from like January through March, because you have a south node in Capricorn, which is examining your masculine and feminine union within, and in integrating your masculine and your feminine aspects, a higher expression of both of those. So, but yeah, through this 20-year transit, you'll have Pluto crossing your or you already had Pluto crossing your ascendant. So you'll have Pluto moving into your second house through this 20-year transit, which means that, you know, it just feels related to the building of, you know, your physical plane, you know, of your life, of how you make money, where you live, things like that, you know. So I think it's like a positive movement away from your ascendant, which are like pretty heavy hitting, you know. That's when Pluto crosses your ascendant, it can feel like shocking, and moving through your first house as it has been for a long time in Capricorn, and moving into Aquarius, which is a little bit lighter for you, you know. So
less challenges in that department.
yeah, I think it's going to be like the building of, you know, what's interesting, community, you know, and a community, maybe finding your place and where you want to invest your resources, things like that, with it being in your second house. And your second house is Aquarius, so that makes sense, you know, just like figuring out what community looks like for you, where you want to live, you know, which I know are big questions for you for sure. So yeah.
Fascinating.
I know. It's wild.
Thank you, Allie.
You're so welcome. Yeah. I've never done a reading on a podcast before, so that was fun.
You haven't?
No.
Oh. Yeah, I there's a podcast I like to listen to that's on astrology. It's called Sunshine Astrology.
I never heard of it.
And she interviews people who have follow their calling, and they do the work that actually shows up in their chart as well, what they're meant to be doing. And then she usually will like then do an analysis of their chart and like see like why it makes sense what they're doing and stuff like that.
I love that. That is
So I guess
cool.
I got the inspiration to ask you
I
to
love
do
that.
from there.
You know, I love that. I'm feeling called to start my own podcast next year too.
Nice.
I've been feeling that for a while and knowing that I want to move away from Instagram a little bit because I just share so much free content on there, and it is very draining, and it's such a weird platform that I'm like, okay, I need a channel where I can share, more of energy updates and things like that. And it would be fun to interview some people and do what we just did too. So I'll have to have you on again and we can look at your chart again. But
yeah, that'd be fun.
Definitely.
Do you have a name for it yet?
No clue. I have no name, no framework started, but it's just there. I can feel it floating around. So
I'm excited.
Thank you.
I will be listening. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ali.
You're so welcome. It was so good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I wanted to see if there's anything else you'd like to share before we finish. And of course, you need to tell people where to find you, but also if there's anything else.
Oh, yeah. I have a few spots open for my mentorship that begins in January. And it's, kind of what we talked about earlier. It's a 3-month journey in focusing on the integration of self, which is how I describe the work that I do and work with, and the way Source guides me. And so creating integration of the fragmentation that occurs in being in this physical manifestation, this physical incarnation, and just guiding women through the activation of their power, and the healing of their parts. So that begins in January. I have a few spots left for that. So my calendar's full. So I have a problem because I'm meant to book clarity calls, but my calendar's full. So I'm trying to figure out how to work that out. But if anyone's interested in that's listening, they can reach out through Instagram or on my email, which can be found on my website. So I'm happy to chat about that. I'm also happy to answer any questions anyone has about things we shared today, but I'm excited for this next year. I feel like it's like, I mentioned this on the podcast that I did for today on the Align podcast, but it's like, it's Jedi energy, where we're embodying what we came here to be, so I'm excited for that.
Me too. I love when things move fast.
I love that for you. That's so fun. I'm excited to see what next year brings for you. I know you've gone through lots of initiations recently as well.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'll come visit you next year.
You should. You have an open invitation.
Thank you. And, I would love that.
Hopefully I'll have my cabin. I do have a cabin now for 2 months, but I don't know if that's the final one I'll be in, but hopefully I'll figure that out, and by the time you come visit, it'll be perfect and ready.
I love it. What is a good time to come to Sweden or to Norway?
Oh, summer. Summer is always so wonderful.
Yeah.
There's so much light, and just the skies, and the water, everything just looks so beautiful. There's so much light energy. You can just see it everywhere.
Sounds perfect. Yeah. Although I do love snow and darkness. I'm kind of like a winter baby, but it's...
Well, I guess then come both in the summer and the winter.
Okay, perfect. I'll do both.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much, Ali. It was wonderful to have you on here.
And thank you for having me.
Everyone, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you guys soon again.